Hello everyone, and welcome to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy. I just saw Deadpool, and holy hell, there's a lot of Easter eggs and references in this thing. In some scenes, every other line is referencing pop culture, the comics, or other superhero movies, the first Deadpool movie, and even scenes that connect back to the trailers. Oh, and of course, massive spoilers for Deadpool 2, other X-Men movies, and literally anything that has ever happened in the universe up to the point you started watching this video. The movie opens with a dig at Logan for copying Deadpool's R rating, and I would love to get my hands on one of those impaled Logan music boxes. The song it's playing is Air Supply's All Out of Love, which Ryan Reynolds' character Van Wilder played on an acoustic guitar in the movie Van Wilder. During the opening killing montage, he pops out of a coffin in Sicily and says, "Don't go in there," which is from Ace Ventura.
Do not go in there. Woo!
When he phones the Chinese gang, he says Gail is calling, which might be a reference to the comic book writer Gail Simone, who had a popular run on the Deadpool comic and now writes for the new Domino series. Wade also says he only knows a little Spanish and says "Donde está la biblioteca?", which is of course from every 9th grade Spanish textbook ever made, and this scene from the sitcom Community.
¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
Wade running toward Deadpool's cab is very reminiscent of the opening sequence of Raiders of the Lost Ark, when Indiana Jones is running away from the Jovitos towards Jacques' plane. Dopender then compares himself to 10-year-old Kirsten Dunst in the movie Interview with the Vampire. In that film, she gets a taste for killing and finds she can't stop. This will also parallel the alternate future where Rusty becomes the villain known as Fire Fist after he gets a taste for killing. Wade calls Dopender Goose, a reference to the underground homoerotic volleyball film Top Gun. At home, Wade tells Vanessa he stopped fighting a guy because both their moms were named Martha, like in this scene.
Save Martha!
I can never keep a straight face when I watch that. When discussing names for their kid, Wade throws out Connor. This is more likely a reference to the late Connor McGrath, a Make-A-Wish recipient who received a special screening of the first Deadpool prior to its release. At one point, Wade says that the film Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants is pornography. This is probably Ryan Reynolds poking fun at his wife, Blake Lively, who starred in that movie. Most of Wade's pop culture references are on point, though he did seem to misread Luke's arc in Star Wars when he said that the Jedi Master grew up to nail his sister. But then again, if you only skimmed those movies, I can see how you could get that impression. In Wade and Vanessa's apartment, a poster reads True Believer. This is Stan Lee's affectionate nickname for Marvel fans. The couple are watching Yentl, appropriate because Barbra Streisand is cable actor Josh Brolin's stepmother. The sound of a ticking toaster oven underscores the fight between Wade and the assassins, and Vanessa is killed when the chimichangas are finished. This gives the first Deadpool teaser a whole new meaning when you rewatch it. Seriously, it's a little creepy now, you should rewatch it. In fact, there's a lot of foreshadowing in the trailers. The Norman Rockwell painting, Freedom from Want, foreshadows that Deadpool 2 is a up kind of family movie, and the action figure Crotch Attack on Cable is actually featured in the film. And maybe this red blob could have been the Juggernaut all along.
What?
In the trailer, Deadpool also says he's high on cocaine, and we see a lot of booger sugar in the film's first act. But this scene also references the first film, when Wade tells Blind Al that he's hidden an illegal substance in the house next to a cure for blindness. When Wade retrieves the cocaine, it's next to a package labeled Cure for Blindness. The opening credits and Celine Dion ballad are a riff on all the extended James Bond opening sequences, and Flashdance gets a call out in the credits as well. The credits also say the film is brought to you by one of the guys who killed John Wick's dog, and this is referencing John Wick co-director David Leitch, who directed Deadpool 2 and clearly has no soul. When he's in the X-Mansion, Wade is wearing a t-shirt of Taylor Swift's cats, and I only know that because these cats are amazing and I love them. Wade is cruising around the vacant X-Mansion in Charles Xavier's wheelchair and wearing the professor's favorite murder helmet, Cerebro. He also calls out a mutant with pigeon wings, probably referencing the Angel.
Carry on my wayward son.
And when we see the X-Men for their brief cameo, Quicksilver is wearing a Nirvana t-shirt. In his prior 2 films, this character has gotten an extended sequence featuring his speed set to a pop song from the era. First, it was Time in a Bottle in Days of Future Past, then Sweet Dreams in Age of Apocalypse. So maybe in X-Men Dark Phoenix, which is set in the 1990s, we'll see a slow-motion super speed sequence set to Come As You Are. And when he meets Yukio, hi Yukio, he calls her Pinkie Pie from My Little Pony, who has never been my favorite My Little Pony. Wade's yellow X-Men trainee jersey is reminiscent of his costume when he was briefly an X-Man in the comics. Russell Collins is an adaptation of the comic book hero of the same name, who also flirted with the dark side when he briefly joined Magneto's acolytes. Deadpool tries to repeat Colossus's 4 or 5 moment speech from Deadpool 1 to calm Rusty down, but like in the first speech, it ends with with Deadpool murdering a guy. The orphanage where Rusty lives is called the Essex Home for Boys, a reference to Nathan Essex, the villain with the worst name ever, Mr. Sinister. He raised Cyclops in a similar orphanage. When he arrives at the scene, Deadpool calls the X-Men a dated reference to 1960s racism. It's interesting that the film tried to update this message by making the villains the mutant equivalent of conversion therapy. Colossus quotes RoboCop,
"Come quietly or there will be trouble,"
but is immediately called out by Rusty and Wade. The reporter broadcasting Rusty's rampage is Irene Merriweather, a sometimes love interest of Cable's in the comics. And you can see her again later when Shatterstar... But one of the subtlest Easter eggs in the film is the sly way they address the sexual misconduct allegations against co-star TJ Miller. Despite these allegations, Miller was not recast in this film. The news ticker reads, Christopher Plummer turns down role in Deadpool 2. Plummer famously reshot all of Kevin Spacey's scenes in All the Money in the World weeks before the film was released, after Kevin Spacey was outed as a terrible human being. When Wade is knocked into the orphanage, he meets a kid played by Luke Rossler, who has another X connection. He plays young David Haller on Legion. The kid is eating a cereal called Hero Flakes, which features Wolverine on the box. Wade says without his powers, he's as useless as Hawkeye without a bow, one of the many sick burns leveled at the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When Wade enters the Icebox prison, he asks if the gangs are picked with a sorting hat, a reference to Harry Potter. And his prisoner number is 24601. This is a reference to Jean Valjean's prison number in the book, musical, and film Les Miserables, where he was played by Wolverine actor Hugh Jackman. In the prison, Wade meets Black Tom Cassidy, brother of the X-Man Banshee and frequent ally of the Juggernaut. At one point, Wade calls him Black Adam, the arch-nemesis of the DC hero Captain Marvel. In the future, Cable is mourning his wife and daughter while the song Tomorrow from the musical Annie plays. This explains why Ryan Reynolds recently performed the song on Korean TV. It's also neat foreshadowing since the climax of the film takes place in an orphanage. Cable's gun has 11 different settings on it, which is a clear reference to the movie This Is Spinal Tap. And every time he changes a setting, it sounds like he's hitting a different note on a guitar. Cable has many parallels with the Terminator, such as doing a one-handed reload of his gun. Deadpool says, "Hands off that kid, John Connor," which is an incorrect reference because John Connor was the name of the kid, not the Terminator. And when Cable appears in the past, he immediately robs rednecks, like the Terminator robs a gang. And one of the rednecks is played by Alan Tudyk, who voiced Duke in the movie Frozen, which is referenced later when Wade realizes that Do You Want to Build a Snowman has the exact same melody as Papa Can You Hear Me?
Papa, can you hear me?
Do you want to build a snowman? Do you want to be a Batman?
Anyways, when Cable shows up, he steals a six-pack of beer, which could be a reference to how his first superhero team, the Six Pack, named themselves after a few cans of Bud. Wade says Cable has a Winter Soldier arm and later tries to stop a bullet with his hand, much like Winter Soldier and Tony Stark did in Captain America Civil War. He tells Cable,
I'm Batman.
which of course is one of Michael Keaton's most famous lines from the 1989 film Batman. And there's another nod to Batman later. This gun has a bang flag identical to the Joker's in that film. He also says Cable is dark enough to be from the DC universe, a dig at dark films like Suicide Squad and Batman vs. Superman.
Save Martha!
Every time. Weasel uses the word mutie at one point, which is a slur against mutants in the comics, and I think this is the first time we hear it in an X-Men film. When we meet Shatterstar, we get our first movie shout out to his home, Mojo World, where an entire culture revolves around violence and television ratings. Wade calls his new team X-Force, and his X symbol is right hand over left, just like the Wakandan salute. The team jumps out of an airplane, and this has to be a dig at the many times MCU characters have hopped out of planes. They even make the leap while AC/DC's Thunderstruck is playing, similar to Iron Man arriving while Shoot to Thrill is playing in the Avengers. Deadpool lands on a billboard for Hillside Amusement Park with a sign reading Puppet Show inside. But on the street, a tree is being fed into a wood chipper brand named Geppetto. Something tells me the puppet show's canceled, kids. X-Force member Zeitgeist has a tattoo that reads 116, a reference to X-Force number 116, the character's first and last appearance. Like his comic book counterpart, Zeitgeist died a grisly death. Also, as they're parachuting, we see our Stan Lee cameo as he's immortalized as a building mural. Also, in a huge surprise cameo, Brad Pitt played the Vanisher. There's an ice cream truck called Pryor's Treats, a reference to Madeline Pryor, clone of Jean Grey and mother of Cable. She was created by Mr. Sinister, who was alluded to earlier in the film. During the car chase, Wade makes fun of Domino's powers and says she must have been created by some guy who can't draw feet. This is a dig at Deadpool and X-Force co-creator Rob Liefeld, who can't draw feet. or anything else. Deadpool rides a scooter, which is straight from the comic book. When we meet Juggernaut, Deadpool doesn't beat around the bush and directly calls out the comic books he's been featured in, including X-Men 12, Unlimited X-Men 12, Uncanny X-Men 183, and Thor number 411. Later, Juggernaut tells Rusty he wears his helmet so his brother can't read his mind. In the comics, Charles Xavier and Juggernaut are stepbrothers, which was never implied in the Juggernaut's previous film appearance.
I'm the Juggernaut!
But it's nice to know they're correcting the timeline. During his second fight with Cable, Deadpool also repeated his Jedi bullets versus swords technique from X-Men Origins Wolverine, but he's lost a step since the 70s. He also called Cable One-Eyed Willie, a reference to the Lost Pirate in the Goonies, which launched a young Josh Brolin's career. There's a much more subtle reference later. When Wade is regrowing his legs, he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, identical to Chunk's shirt in the Goonies. The really uncomfortable leg crossing scene is a parody of Sharon Stone's leg uncrossing in Basic Instinct. Wade calls this going full Winnie the Pooh because the bear has no pants and forever ruining my perception of Winnie the Pooh.
Christopher Robin.
When Domino is carrying his legless torso like a backpack, it's just like Chewbacca carrying C-3PO around Cloud City. And if Wade had watched those movies a little closer, maybe he would have made that reference. When Wade holds up a boombox outside of the X-Mansion, it's a reference to the film Say Anything, Kids Ask Your Parents. In fact, Colossus even lays on the bed exactly like Diane Court does in that film. And there's an ad on the top of Dopender's taxi for Alpha Flight. They're a group of mutants who, like Ryan Reynolds, are from Canada. Wade asks Rusty why he's dressed like the Unabomber, and Rusty says, "Damn, it feels good to be a gangsta," which is the name of a classic song from the Ghetto Boys.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
In the last fight, we get a couple more digs at the MCU. Wade calls Cable Thanos, a reference to that other comic book movie that starred Josh Brolin this year, and to calm down the Juggernaut, Wade repeats the Black Widow's soothing phrase to the Hulk.
Hey, big guy.
The sun's getting real low.
When Wade says, "Sweep the leg, Johnny," he's referring to the dirty move from the original Karate Kid. During his death scene, Deadpool's suit is covered in ashes, mirroring Deadpool's gray suit when he joined X-Force in the comics. In the Essex house, there's a poster that reads, "M-Day is near." M-Day is a reference to the comics when Scarlet Witch erased nearly all mutants from existence. In the comics, Hope Summers was a kind of mutant messiah, the first mutant born after Scarlet Witch nearly erased them from existence. To protect her, she was raised in the future by Cable, and in the film, Cable's daughter is named Hope. Scotty Young, the artist who drew several issues of Deadpool and Cable, drew the closing credits sketches. In one of the sketches, Deadpool is wearing a white tuxedo jacket. Like the opening credits, this is a nod to James Bond. And in that amazing mid-credits sequence, he calls Negasonic Teenage Warhead 11, a reference to Stranger Things. The wristwatch he wears as he travels through time looks a lot like the devices the Avengers wear on their wrist in the leaked set photos of Avengers 4, and maybe that's like a grenade Easter egg. You know, one you throw out there now, but no one catches it till way later. He kills Ryan Reynolds before he can star in Green Lantern, and finally clears up the timeline for good by killing the first big screen version of Deadpool. Well, I hope that's enough because that's all the Easter eggs we found. Be sure to subscribe and watch our full X-Men recap. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.